All right, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into the world of US Cellular.
Yeah.
You know, the company you might even use for your phone.
Hmm.
We're talking big money moves, some serious corporate shakeups,
Yeah.
and a whole lot of juicy details.
Oh, yeah. And what's cool is that we're using actual SEC filings for this deep dive.
Oh, wow.
These are like, those documents companies have to file with the government.
Right.
And trust me, they're packed with information.
Yeah, they're not exactly light reading, are they?
No, not really.
But that's why we're here.
That's why we're here, yeah.
To break it down, you don't have to be a Wall Street whiz
Exactly.
to understand what went down.
Yeah, we'll decode all that financial jargon.
Yeah.
And get right to the heart of all this corporate drama.
It's like we're going behind the scenes of a major business deal.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to understand how
Mm-hmm.
and why US Cellular ended up selling a big chunk of their business to T-Mobile.
Right, to one of their biggest competitors.
So one of their biggest competitors. And to kick things off, let's talk about who really controls US Cellular.
Okay.
Because it turns out they weren't exactly calling all the shots here.
Yeah, that's a good point. The filings actually show that another company called Telephone and Data Systems,
Okay.
or TDS for short,
TDS.
yeah, they own a huge chunk of US Cellular.
Like, how much are we talking?
We're talking 82.5% of their stock.
Wow.
And even more importantly, they have about 96% of the voting power.
Whoa. So TDS basically has the final say
Mm-hmm.
on any major decision.
Exactly. This kind of setup
Yeah.
where one company has so much control over another.
Right.
It's pretty common in the business world.
Okay.
It can make things more efficient, but it also raises some interesting questions.
Oh, like what?
Like, did US Cellular really have a choice when it came to this deal with T-Mobile?
Right.
Or was it TDS calling the shots from behind the scenes?
Makes you wonder.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so TDS is kind of the puppet master here.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's get into the sale itself. Because this wasn't just a sudden decision, right?
No, it was a whole process.
It was a whole process.
It was the filings actually give us a pretty detailed timeline
Oh, wow.
of how it all went down starting in late 2023.
Okay.
Just imagine, like a bunch of executives in suits
Mm-hmm.
huddled in these like secret meetings
Right.
discussing potential buyers
Yeah.
and weighing their options.
It's like a corporate thriller or something.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
So according to the filings, it all started with what they call
Okay.
a strategic alternatives review,
Right.
which is basically a fancy way of saying
Yeah.
they were exploring all their options for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And this included reaching out to a whopping 17 potential buyers.
17. They weren't messing around.
No.
So who are these mystery suitors?
Well, we know T-Mobile was one of them.
Okay.
But the filings also mentioned these other interested parties, referred to only as Party D
Party
and Party A.
A. Gotta love that corporate secrecy.
Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Keeps things interesting.
So it was a real bidding war for US Cellular's business.
It looks like it. By November 2023, things were moving fast.
Okay.
Potential buyers, including T-Mobile,
Mm-hmm.
started digging into US Cellular's financials.
Right?
This process is called due diligence.
Due diligence?
Yeah, think of it like a financial checkup
Okay.
before you make a big purchase. They're looking at everything,
Wow.
from revenue and profits to customer churn and network infrastructure.
So they were giving these potential buyers a behind-the-scenes look at their whole operation.
Yep.
Pretty risky, right?
It is risky, but it's also standard practice
Okay.
in these kinds of deals.
I see.
And then by February 2024,
Yeah.
things got even hotter.
Okay.
US Cellular was in full-on negotiation mode,
Oh, wow.
meeting with T-Mobile, Party D, and Party A
Right.
to discuss their proposals and get feedback.
Multiple suitors. Secret meetings, financial showdowns.
We've got it all.
Yeah, this is crazy. We
Yeah.
should pitch this to Netflix.
Maybe we should.
Yeah.
But anyway, by April 2024, negotiations with T-Mobile
Right.
were clearly in the lead.
Uh-huh.
They'd even started drafting the official transaction documents.
Okay.
And finally, on May 24th,
Yeah.
the big day arrived.
Uh-huh.
The securities purchase agreement was signed officially, sealing the deal.
Talk about a whirlwind romance.
It was.
But let's get down to brass tacks here.
Okay.
What did T-Mobile actually pay for all of this?
We're talking big money.
Okay.
The filings put the base purchase price at a cool $4.4 billion.
Wow.
And T-Mobile also took on about $2 billion of US Cellular's debt.
$4.4 billion, that's enough to buy a small country.
It is.
Seriously, though, is that a good deal for US Cellular?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's not as simple as just looking at the price tag.
Right.
We need to consider US Cellular's financial health before the sale. You know, how this price compares to other deals in the telecom industry.
Right.
A bunch of other factors.
Okay, so we'll have to hold that thought.
Mm.
But here's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
The filings reveal that T-Mobile didn't actually buy all of US Cellular's wireless operations outright.
That's true.
There's this whole thing about delayed transfer licenses, which basically means some parts of the deal, specifically some spectrum licenses, weren't immediately handed over to T-Mobile.
Right.
Delayed transfer licenses. That sounds complicated.
It is a little bit.
What's the reason for that?
Well, there could be a few reasons.
Okay.
It could be due to regulatory hurdles that need to be cleared.
Okay.
You know, before the transfer can be finalized. The government has to make sure everything is above board.
Right.
And that the deal doesn't hurt competition.
I see.
Or it could be a strategic move.
Okay.
By either US Cellular or T-Mobile.
Yeah.
Maybe to get a better negotiating position down the line.
So even though the deal is officially done,
Yeah.
there's still some pieces moving around.
They're right.
And we also need to understand how US Cellular was doing financially before all of this went down.
Yeah.
And luckily, the SEC filings are full of clues.
They are.
One thing that jumps out is EBITDA, which stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Right. EBITDA is a key measure of a company's profitability.
Okay.
Basically, it tells you how much money they're making from their core operations before taking into account things like taxes and interest payments.
Okay.
And in 2023, US Cellular reported an adjusted EBITDA of $986 million.
So they were making a decent profit.
Yeah, they were.
But the filings also mentioned something called GAAP and non-GAAP measures. It seems like US Cellular was using both.
Right.
What's the difference?
That's an important point.
Yeah.
GAAP stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, which are like the official rules for how companies should report their finances.
Okay.
Non-GAAP measures, on the other hand,
Yeah.
allow companies to tweak those rules a bit.
Right.
To highlight certain aspects of their performance.
I see.
Sometimes they use non-GAAP figures to exclude, one-time expenses or other unusual items that might skew the overall picture of their profitability.
So it's like looking at the same picture through different filters.
And
it's important to know which filter's being used because it can change how we interpret the data.
Exactly. And in US Cellular's case, they were using both GAAP and non-GAAP measures to present their financial performance.
So we need to be aware of this when we analyze their numbers.
Yeah.
Because it gives us a more complete picture of their financial health.
Exactly.
Got it. So they were making decent profits, but they were also playing a bit loose with the accounting rules.
Well, you could say that.
But let's be real. Every business faces challenges and risks, right?
Of course.
And I'm sure US Cellular had its fair share of worries.
Oh, yeah.
Even before this whole T-Mobile thing. And the filings actually highlight some of those potential risks.
They do.
Okay.
One of the big ones was maintaining their telecommunications networks.
Right.
And IT systems.
Yeah, makes sense.
Any hiccups there could have a ripple effect on their entire business.
In today's world, those networks are like the nervous system of a telecom company.
They are.
Any outage or disruption could cause chaos.
Absolutely.
Another risk they highlighted was access to capital.
Yes.
And potential changes in interest rates.
Right. Borrowing money can get a lot more expensive if interest rates rise.
Right.
Which can put a strain on any company's finances.
It's like walking a financial tightrope.
It is.
One wrong step and it's all over.
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's always the legal minefield to navigate.
Always.
US Cellular also mentioned potential risks associated with lawsuits, particularly cases related to emissions from devices or network equipment.
Right. Concerns about health and environmental impact.
So they were already dealing with a lot of complexity.
They were.
Even before this big sale. It must have been quite a stressful time for the folks at US Cellular.
Yeah, and all of this was happening before they even entered into negotiations with T-Mobile.
So I can only imagine the pressure they were under.
Oh, yeah.
During the sale process.
Absolutely.
That's a great point. And it brings us to the human side of this whole story.
Okay.
How did this sale impact US Cellular's employees?
Right.
Because behind all these financial figures and legal documents, there are real people whose livelihoods were affected.
Absolutely, you're right.
Yeah.
And the filings do shed some light on this aspect.
Okay.
They reveal that up to 400 employees were designated as retained business employees.
Retained business employees.
Meaning they would continue to provide services to T-Mobile.
Okay.
For up to a year after the closing of the deal.
So it wasn't a clean break for everyone?
No, it wasn't.
Some folks were caught in between these two corporate giants?
Exactly. These employees essentially found themselves in this transitional phase, still working on aspects of the business they were once fully a part of, but now under a new boss.
I can only imagine the uncertainty and anxiety they must have felt.
I'm sure it was a difficult time.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole question of executive compensation.
Right.
The filings detail the base salaries, bonuses, and stock options of US Cellular's top executives.
We're talking about folks like Laurent C. Therivel, the president and CEO, along with Douglas W. Chambers, Michael S. Irizarry, and Kevin R. Lowell.
Right. Their financial fates were also tied to this deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's worth examining whether their compensation packages were in line with industry norms and whether they were fairly compensated for leading the company through this massive transition.
So we've got employees shifting roles, executives navigating their own financial outcomes. It really is like a corporate game of chess.
It is.
But with real people as the pieces.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And speaking of complex arrangements, let's delve into the master lease agreement. Or MLA for short.
MLA.
Between US Cellular and T-Mobile. This document is basically the rule book for their ongoing relationship, even after the sale.
The MLA sounds important.
It is.
What does it cover?
Well, for starters, it lays out the terms for how T-Mobile will access the cell towers and other infrastructure that US Cellular still owns.
Right, because even though they sold the main wireless business, US Cellular still owns a lot of the physical infrastructure, like those towers.
Exactly. And the MLA lays out the ground rules for how T-Mobile can access and use those towers.
Okay, so it's not just a free-for-all.
No, it's not.
T-Mobile can't just show up with a ladder and a toolbox.
Well, not exactly. In most cases, yes, they need to give US Cellular notice. Before they, go tinkering around up there. But the MLA does make an exception for emergencies. If a storm knocks out some equipment or there's a major outage, T-Mobile can take action immediately and then notify US Cellular afterward.
Makes sense. You don't want red tape getting in the way when there's a critical situation.
Exactly.
But let's say everything is running smoothly. No emergencies. Who's responsible for keeping those towers in tip-top shape?
That's another area the MLA covers in detail.
I see.
It spells out who's responsible for maintenance. And making sure everything is up to code. And it's not as simple as you might think.
I'm guessing US Cellular isn't completely off the hook?
You guessed right. US Cellular, or whoever actually owns the tower, if it's not directly owned by US Cellular, is still responsible for things like general upkeep, repairs, and even replacing parts of the tower if needed.
So things like keeping the grass cut, making sure the lights work, patching up any damage.
Exactly.
All that falls on US Cellular.
Think of them as the property managers for those tower sites.
Got it.
They need to make sure everything is in good working order
Yeah.
and safe for T-Mobile's crews to access.
But what if US Cellular drags their feet on making repairs? Let's say T-Mobile needs something fixed urgently.
Yeah.
But US Cellular is taking their sweet time.
Well, the MLA has a clause for that, too.
Oh, okay.
If US Cellular doesn't address a maintenance issue within 48 hours of being notified by T-Mobile, then T-Mobile has the right to step in and fix it themselves.
So T-Mobile isn't completely at their mercy.
No.
They've got some leverage if US Cellular isn't holding up their end of the bargain.
Precisely. And your cellular would then have to reimburse T-Mobile for any reasonable costs they incurred making those repairs.
That seems fair. It's like a built-in safety net.
It is.
For T-Mobile.
Yeah.
But let's talk about another kind of safety net. Insurance.
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking about massive cell towers and a lot of expensive equipment here.
That's right. Insurance is a crucial part of any agreement involving physical assets and potential liability. And the MLA doesn't skimp on the details when it comes to insurance requirements.
So what kind of coverage are we talking about? Surely they're not insuring the whole $4.4 billion purchase price, right?
No, it's not about covering the actual sale itself.
Yeah.
It's more about mitigating the risks associated with ongoing operations and potential accidents or damages.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So what kind of scenarios would this insurance cover?
Well, the MLA specifically requires US Cellular to carry commercial general liability insurance. This covers things like bodily injury or property damage that might occur at those tower sites.
So if a technician slips and falls while working on a tower, or if some equipment malfunctions and damages a neighboring property, US Cellular's insurance would kick in.
Exactly. And we're not talking about chump change here. The MLA requires coverage limits of at least $5 million per occurrence.
Wow. That's a pretty hefty safety net.
It is.
But it makes sense when you consider potential risks involved.
Absolutely.
And here's another interesting detail. The MLA also specifies that T-Mobile, their affiliates, their executives, and even their employees are all listed as additional insured parties on US Cellular's policy.
It's true. Wait, so even though T-Mobile now owns the wireless business, they're still covered by US Cellular's insurance?
Yes, and that's a very common practice in these types of deals. It basically provides an extra layer of protection for T-Mobile. Ensuring they're not left holding the bag. If something goes wrong at those tower sites.
Smart move on T-Mobile's part.
Oh, yeah.
They're really covering all their bases here.
Absolutely. They're clearly not taking any chances.
Yeah, but let's not forget that even with all these safeguards, things can still go wrong.
Of course.
Contracts can be breached, payments can be missed, and obligations can be neglected. And the MLA addresses those scenarios as well.
It does.
We can't just assume that everything will always run smoothly.
No, definitely not.
So what happens if someone drops the ball? What if US Cellular doesn't live up to their end of the bargain?
That's where things get a bit more legally complex. The MLA has an entire section dedicated to defining what constitutes a default. And outlining the remedies available to T-Mobile. If such a default occurs.
Let's put on our legal hats for a second. What exactly would be considered a default by US Cellular under this agreement?
The MLA outlines several scenarios that could trigger a default. The most straightforward one is failure to make payments. If US Cellular doesn't cough up the agreed-upon license fees or other payments within 10 business days of receiving a written notice from T-Mobile, that's a big no-no.
So basically pay up on time or face the music.
Pretty much. But it goes beyond just missing payments. The MLA also considers it a default if US Cellular fails to fulfill any of their other obligations outlined in the agreement.
Like those maintenance responsibilities we talked about earlier. So if they're letting those tower sites fall apart,
or not providing proper access to T-Mobile, that could also trigger a default.
Exactly. It's all about ensuring that both parties are holding up their end of the bargain. And that this partnership, even after the sale, continues to function smoothly.
Okay, so we've established what constitutes a default. But what can T-Mobile actually do if US Cellular does mess up? What are their options?
Well, the MLA gives T-Mobile a whole range of remedies. Depending on the nature and severity of the default. It could be something as simple as sending a strongly worded letter or demanding immediate payment.
A little legal slap on the wrist.
Exactly.
But in more serious cases, T-Mobile could potentially terminate the lease agreement altogether, take legal action to recover damages, or even try to force US Cellular to sell them the remaining assets.
They've got options.
So they're not messing around.
Nope. They've got some serious firepower if US Cellular isn't playing by the rules.
Absolutely. It's all about protecting their investment and ensuring they have access to the infrastructure they need to operate their wireless network.
But, looking at this whole MLA, it seems pretty heavily skewed in T-Mobile's favor. They get access to the towers. US Cellular's responsible for maintenance. They're even covered by US Cellular's insurance. It almost feels like US Cellular got the short end of the stick here.
It's true that the MLA does give T-Mobile a lot of control and protection.
Right.
Which isn't surprising given that they're the buyer in this deal.
Right.
But we shouldn't assume that US Cellular is getting a raw deal.
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay.
How does this benefit US Cellular?
Well, remember, US Cellular is still receiving those hefty lease payments from T-Mobile.
Right.
For the use of their towers and other assets. That's a significant revenue stream for them, especially now that they've sold off the main wireless business.
Ah, right. So it's not just about expenses and obligations.
Yeah.
Cellular is still generating income from this deal.
Exactly. It's more of a long-term partnership than a clean break.
I see.
T-Mobile gets access to the infrastructure they need to expand their network. And US Cellular gets a steady stream of revenue from their existing assets.
So it's more of a win-win situation?
It seems like it.
Than it initially appeared?
Yeah.
But we've been so focused on the companies involved, I almost forgot about the most important part.
Oh, yeah.
The customers.
Why?
Did this deal end up affecting consumers in any way?
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And it's one that the SEC filings don't directly address.
Okay.
However, they do give us some clues about the competitive landscape of the telecom industry, which can help us understand the potential impact on consumers.
Okay, let's follow those clues. Okay. What can we glean from these documents about the bigger picture?
Well, one thing that jumps out is the mention of something called designated entities.
Okay.
And short-term spectrum manager sublease agreements.
The designated entities. Spectrum sublease agreements, you're losing me here.
Okay.
Can you break that down in simpler terms?
Imagine it like this.
Okay.
US Cellular was teaming up with other companies to share the costs and benefits of owning certain spectrum licenses.
Okay.
These partners are what the filings refer to as designated entities.
So it's like a joint venture.
It is.
They were pooling their resources to acquire valuable spectrum.
Right.
But why the sublease agreements?
Well, it seems that US Cellular was actually leasing spectrum from these designated entities to use in their own network.
So it's like subletting an apartment. You're using someone else's property, but you're paying them for the right to do so.
Right.
Ah, I see. So US Cellular wasn't the sole owner of all the spectrum they were using. They were leasing some of it from these partners. But how does this tie into the T-Mobile deal?
As part of the sale.
Okay.
Lease agreements with the designated entities were partially assigned and subleased to T-Mobile.
Okay.
Allowing them to continue using that spectrum.
Right.
For at least a year.
Exactly.
So even though the main sale was finalized, T-Mobile needed this temporary arrangement to keep using some of the spectrum that US Cellular had been leasing.
Exactly. It shows how intricate these deals can be, especially when it comes to something as valuable and regulated as wireless spectrum. It's not as simple as just handing over a bunch of equipment and calling it a day.
And remember those delayed transfer licenses we talked about earlier?
I do. The ones that weren't immediately transferred to T-Mobile, those are probably connected to these designated entities as well, right?
It's very likely.
Maybe some regulatory hurdles need to be cleared before that spectrum can be fully transferred.
That's a very astute observation.
Thanks.
It all ties back to this complex web of agreements.
Right.
And all the regulatory hoops that companies have to jump through in the telecom world.
It's like a corporate soap opera with a telecom twist.
It kind of is.
But seriously, what does all this tell us about the bigger impact of this US Cellular T-Mobile deal?
Well, for one thing, it shows how the telecom landscape is constantly shifting. You know, we're seeing more consolidation with these major players like T-Mobile buying up these smaller companies and expanding their reach.
Right.
This particular deal was especially complex.
You
know, involving a mix of owned assets, leased assets, and spectrum held through these various partnerships.
And I imagine all this maneuvering has implications for competition.
Right.
And ultimately for the consumers who rely on these companies for their phone and internet service.
Absolutely. When you have fewer companies controlling the market, there's always the potential for prices to go up.
Right.
And for innovation to slow down.
Right. Consumers might end up paying more for the same services.
Yeah.
Or having fewer options to choose from.
Exactly. And we also have to think about the impact on innovation.
Okay.
When you have just a few dominant players controlling the market,
right,
it can stifle the emergence of new technologies and services.
Right.
The smaller, more agile companies, they often drive disruption and push the industry forward.
Okay.
So losing that diversity can be detrimental in the long run.
Yeah, but it's not all doom and gloom, right?
That's true.
Consolidation can also have its benefits.
It can. One potential upside is greater efficiency. When a larger company takes over a smaller one, they can often streamline operations, eliminate redundancies, and leverage their scale to negotiate better deals with suppliers.
Right. And those cost savings could potentially translate into lower prices for consumers, although that's not always guaranteed.
That's right.
Another potential benefit is wider network coverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
When a company like T-Mobile expands its footprint, by acquiring assets from another provider, it can reach more customers in more areas.
Exactly.
So there's a potential trade-off here.
Serious.
Consolidation can lead to less competition, less innovation, but it can also bring greater efficiency and wider network coverage.
It's a complex equation with no easy answers.
And ultimately, the impact on consumers will depend on how these competing forces play out over time.
It will.
Will T-Mobile use its newfound dominance to raise prices and stifle competition?
Right.
Or will they leverage their increased efficiency and scale to provide better services at lower costs?
That's the question.
Only time will tell.
Exactly. It's a bit of a wait-and-see situation.
It is.
But while we're waiting, let's not forget
about
the other big question mark in this whole saga.
Right.
The future of US Cellular.
Yes, the retained business. We've spent a lot of time speculating about what that might entail.
Yeah.
But the truth is, the SEC filings don't give us a clear roadmap.
They don't.
Right. It's still shrouded in mystery.
It is.
We know they're holding on to some assets. They have a limited license to use the US Cellular brand.
Right.
And they have a core group of employees managing ongoing operations.
Yeah.
But what's the long-term plan?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball to predict the future.
If only.
But we can look at PDS's history and their strategic moves to make some educated guesses.
Right. TDS has shown a willingness to diversify its portfolio.
They have.
So they might be using US Cellular as a platform to launch into a completely new industry.
That's certainly a possibility.
Wow, that would be a plot twist.
You would.
Or they might choose to focus on a niche market within the telecom sector. Perhaps leveraging their existing infrastructure and expertise to provide specialized services to businesses.
Right.
Or explore emerging technologies like 5G and the Internet of Things.
Exactly.
So US Cellular could become a smaller, more agile player in the telecom game, catering to a specific segment of the market. Or they could become something completely different. A stepping stone for TDS's next big venture.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a lot of possibilities here.
We do.
US Cellular could become a niche telecom provider. They could branch out into a completely new industry, or maybe they'll just fade into the sunset.
Right. The filings leave us with more questions than answers.
They do.
Which is what makes these deep dives so much fun.
Absolutely. We get to sift through the evidence, connect the dots, and draw our own conclusions.
Exactly.
But one thing's for sure, US Cellular story isn't over yet.
Agreed. While one chapter is closed, a new one is about to begin. And it'll be interesting to see what direction TDS decides to take.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the initial sale announcement to the intricacies of the master lease agreement, and now to the uncertain future of US Cellular.
It's been a whirlwind.
It has.
We've explored the financial details, the legal complexities, and even the human impact of this massive corporate deal.
But before we wrap things up, I think it's important to zoom out a bit and consider the broader implications of all this.
Yeah, you're right.
We can't just focus on the individual companies involved. We need to think about how this deal fits into the larger trends shaping the telecom industry.
Absolutely.
And what it might mean for consumers in the long run.
Exactly. So let's take a final step back and connect all these dots.
All right.
We'll explore the potential ripple effects of this US Cellular T-Mobile deal.
Yeah.
And consider what the future might hold for the telecom landscape.
Okay, sounds good.
But for now, let's take a quick breather.
Okay.
And come back for our final analysis.
All right, we're back and ready for the final stretch of our deep dive into this whole US Cellular T-Mobile saga.
Yeah, it's been a long one.
It has.
A lot of twists and turns.
Corporate intrigue, complex contracts, and even some speculation about US Cellular's mysterious future.
It's been quite a journey through these SEC filings.
It really has.
Hasn't it?
But I think we've managed to extract some valuable insights.
I think so, too.
Along the way.
Absolutely.
We've seen how one company, TDS, wields immense control over another. How these billion-dollar deals are so meticulously planned and executed.
It's fascinating.
And how even these seemingly dry documents can reveal such fascinating stories about the business world.
I think one of the key takeaways here is that these kinds of corporate moves, especially in a rapidly evolving industry like telecom, they have far-reaching implications.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's not just about two companies shaking hands and exchanging money.
Right. It's about competition, consumer choices,
Absolutely.
and the future of an industry that's become essential to our daily lives.
Right.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's try to connect those dots. Consider what this US Cellular T-Mobile deal might mean for the bigger picture.
All right. That's good.
One of the most obvious implications is consolidation within the telecom market.
Yeah, we're seeing fewer and fewer major players.
Right.
As the big fish kind of gobble up the smaller ones.
Right, and that trend raises some valid concerns, right?
It does. Less competition often means less incentive to keep prices low or to innovate.
Consumers might end up paying more for the same services or having fewer options to choose from.
Exactly. And we also have to think about the impact on innovation.
Okay.
You know, when you have a few dominant players controlling the market, it can stifle the emergence of new technologies and services.
Okay.
The smaller, more agile companies, they often drive disruption and push the industry forward.
Right.
So losing that diversity can be detrimental in the long run.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right?
No, not at all.
Consolidation can also have its benefits?
It can, yeah.
Like what?
Well, one potential upside is greater efficiency.
Okay.
You know, when a larger company takes over a smaller one, they can often streamline operations.
Right.
Eliminate redundancies. Leverage their scale to negotiate better deals with suppliers.
Right, and those cost savings could potentially translate into lower prices for consumers.
Yeah, potentially.
Although that's not always guaranteed.
That's true.
Another potential benefit is wider network coverage.
Absolutely.
When a company like T-Mobile expands its footprint, it can reach more customers in more areas.
Exactly. So there's a potential trade-off here.
There is.
Consolidation can lead to less competition, less innovation.
Right.
But it can also bring greater efficiency and wider network coverage.
Yeah, it's a complex equation.
It is.
No easy answers.
And ultimately, the impact on consumers will depend on how these competing forces play out over time.
Will T-Mobile use its newfound dominance to raise prices and stifle competition? Or will they leverage their increased efficiency and scale to provide better services at lower costs?
It's a good question.
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
So it's a bit of a wait-and-see situation.
It is. It is.
But while we're waiting, let's not forget about the other big question mark in this whole saga. The future of US Cellular.
The future of US Cellular, the retained business.
Yes.
We've spent a lot of time speculating.
We have.
About what that might be.
But the truth is, the SEC filings don't give us a clear roadmap.
They really don't.
Right. It's still shrouded in mystery.
It is.
We know they're holding on to some assets. They have a limited license to use the US Cellular brand. And they've got a core group of employees managing those ongoing operations.
But what's the long-term plan, you know?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. It is.
Unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball to predict the future.
No, we don't.
But we can look at TDS's history and their strategic moves to make some educated guesses.
We can.
Right. And TDS has shown a willingness to diversify its portfolio.
Absolutely.
So they might be using US Cellular as a platform to launch into a completely new industry.
It's possible. It's definitely possible.
That would be a huge plot twist.
It would be.
Or they might choose to focus on a niche market within the telecom sector.
Yeah.
Perhaps leveraging their existing infrastructure and expertise to provide specialized services to businesses. Or even explore those emerging technologies like 5G.
5G, Internet of Things.
And the Internet of Things.
Yeah, lots of options.
So US Cellular could become this smaller, more agile player in the telecom game.
They could.
Catering to a specific segment of the market. Or they could become something completely different.
Yeah.
A stepping stone for TDS's next big venture.
Exactly. The possibilities are pretty intriguing.
They are.
And it'll be fascinating to see how this all unfolds in the coming years.
Well, that's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it?
It is.
We get to explore the inner workings of the business world. Yeah. Piece together clues from these complex documents and draw our own conclusions.
And even when we don't have all the answers, the process of exploration itself can be incredibly rewarding.
It can be.
It helps us understand how businesses operate, how deals are made, and how these decisions ultimately impact our lives as consumers.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be inspired to do their own deep dives into other companies and industries.
Yeah, that'd be great.
After all, these SEC filings are publicly available.
They are?
To anyone who's curious enough to dig in.
Absolutely. The information is out there, waiting to be uncovered.
It is.
All it takes is a little curiosity.
Right.
And a willingness to dive into those details.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into this US Cellular T-Mobile deal.
It's been fun.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From that initial sale announcement to the intricate details of the master lease agreement and the uncertain future of US Cellular.
The uncertain future? It's exciting, though.
It is.
It's exciting to see what's going to happen.
We've explored the financial implications, the legal complexities, and the potential impact on competition and consumer choices.
Absolutely. And hopefully our listeners have gained some valuable insights along the way.
I hope so.
And maybe even a newfound appreciation for the fascinating world of corporate finance.
It is fascinating.
It is.
And remember, the next time you hear about a big corporate deal, don't just skim those headlines.
No.
Take a deeper dive.
Yes.
Explore the SEC filings.
They're out there.
And see what hidden stories you can uncover.
You never know what you might find.
Exactly.
It's like a treasure hunt.
Until next time, this has been The Deep Dive.
Your shortcut to being well informed.
See you next time.